There's been much talk recently about the Illuminati and its influence on popular culture and the mainstream media. In my own research, I have found much evidence to show that celebrities and politicians are indeed influenced, if not downright directed, by members of sects whose main aim is to generate confusion among the public in order to get the majority to think that all the obvious symbology is nothing more than a particular type of advertising meant to draw the most attention. Unfortunately, many are led to think that all occult secrets are evil or malevolent, though, like any useful tool, there is room for good or evil depending on the person who holds the key. The point I want to make is that many of the popular celebrities and figures utilize occult symbology quite often, though they fail to acknowledge what exactly they are intending to mean by it. And rather, in most cases, they act quite oppositely of what they might try to portray. Most of the examples below are of celebrities who do not promote intelligence, wisdom, or knowledge, but rather partying, hedonism, carelessness, stupidity, materialistic pride, and just general ignorance and arrogance. Just to get past it, I will begin with the notorious Lady Gaga. She either has some sort of eyeball fetish, or she is being directed by someone to constantly cover one eye, much like has been done in the past numerous times by celebrities such as Britney Spears and Madonna. I've listened to some of her songs and come to the conclusion that she is a puppet for the LGBT community who doesn't really do much that any LGBT people I know can relate to any more than they could relate to a colorful Christmas tree. I'm not trying to criticize her musical ability, just the way she presents herself and fails to acknowledge anything of relevance that hasn't already been said or done before, at least as far as I have seen. Anyway, I will let her eyeball speak for itself. I will get into the Disney connection later. Rihanna is also connected closely with Jay-Z, another celebrity who utilizes overt occult imagery but fails to acknowledge why or what he thinks it means. The last thing we need is a rapper who cares about nothing but money ruining the image of Crowley's "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law," which does not mean do what you want, but to find your true will and do it. Which I can assure you is not going to be very easy when you're misguided by these sad excuses for artists. Though Crowley did enough to tarnish his own image so as to prevent those who were unworthy from understanding his work. Another celebrity who utilizes Crowleyan imagery and yet fails to acknowledge any of it is Kanye West. Kanye is known to wear a gaudy Horus necklace, I assume to reference the Aeon of Horus. Some could say he isn't, or probably, the whole Kemetic tradition people on YouTube like to go on about, saying that, because we have melanin, we're special. Some could say he isn't saying anything in the spirit of the four powers of the Sphinx, to know, to will, to dare, and to keep silent, but being so obvious is far from silent. Keep in mind that these celebrities are trying to appeal to the younger generation, as well as to the black community, two groups which aren't generally known for their aspirations towards Illuminism or Enlightenment, particularly in the Crowleyan sense. Well, I would say, yeah, actually the black community really is very spiritual, more so than collectively white people. But a lot of that is geared towards, unfortunately, the Christian side of things. There's nothing wrong with Christianity, but I would say that black people have kind of given too much credence to the European culture. I think that it's good to sort of look back into your more, your actual history and your actual religion and your actual genealogy and ancestry, and not just, accept whatever the Inquisition throws at you. Notice how Kanye West in one of the pictures above is either at an MTV or Nickelodeon premiere of some sort, both of which have utilized the pyramid in front of audiences which would generally have no idea of its implications or origins. Kids and teenagers or whatever. They do love that symbol, though, and the one, I think this is in Canada, it's above a Masonic symbol, or a Masonic temple. The Disney company has had a far-reaching history when it comes to things like subliminal messaging, occult symbolism, and questionable material, which is supposed to be entertainment for children. Many examples can be found by simply Googling Disney Illuminati or Disney Occult. The three biggest Mouseketeers to later have very big celebrity success, Britney Spears, Justin Timberlake, and Christina Aguilera, also have their own fair share of eyeball worship. This isn't obvious. Oh, butterfly symbolism isn't obvious. Oh, just tell the little kids, cover one eye. A new direction, huh? That's real talk. Well, I just wanted to write about how these artists are not really doing much to fight against the centralized control structure, but rather working for it. By their fruits you shall know them. Another musician slash artist who I've mentioned in previous posts has also utilized the all-seeing eye, albeit in a more sarcastic way. Marilyn Manson has much occult imagery in his lyrics, videos, and painting, although if you listen to his lyrics and interviews, you can clearly see that he is reflecting the corporatist conformist back in a way that his audience can actually learn from. For example, I need to restate that. You can clearly see he's reflecting the corporatism and conformism back in a way his audience can actually learn from. For example, Manson states in the opening of the cover song Rock and Roll Nigger, I was raised in America and America hates me for what I am. I am your shit. You should be ashamed of what you have eaten. Which he corroborated in his next album with the song The Reflecting God, and pretty much every song to date, particularly in his triptych. Marilyn Manson is the only artist I know of to utilize the very imagery all the above artists have failed to accurately explain. He is also one of the few semi-mainstream artists to openly talk about the fascism of the mainstream media and politics and how America is turning into a police state, unlike all the other celebrities I have thus far referred. For more info on Marilyn Manson's views on this subject, I urge you to look at these articles on the Noct Cabaret website. Of course, he's got the eye everywhere. Here are various other media usages of the all-seeing eye. It is used in everything from bank advertisements to models and magazines. Michael Jackson, they had him doing it since he was a little kid. And they still got her doing it. I got them doing it. All of them. I mean, I really don't... This post was, again, just like... I was just... Holy shit, something... there. And yeah, I'm not the only one who's posted anything like this. I don't even know why I did, other than the fact... Just for, like, a record, and because it's... an indictment. I mean, it's damning. It's just look at it. And what do all these pop culture icons have in common? They're all highly publicized by the same corporations that own the media and many controlling factors of society. They are pawns who will gladly sell you falsehood and benefit from your ignorance. The time has come that you either open your eyes or be perpetually lost in denial and fear. It's time you wake up and face the real nightmare, or it will never end. And the eye spiral, symbolic of hypnosis, from the Time Warner cable. Then there's this video which goes over all the different... a bunch of just different, like, mind control shit in Hollywood. But yeah, I mean, with what's come out in the last, like, year with all the sexual harassment, like, that's the tip of the iceberg. There's probably a...
Why do some artists who have a certain amount of talent, some not very much, why do they get picked up by the corporations to become these big influencers of young people and other people through the entertainment and the music industry, and others with incredible talent never get off the ground? It's because they are chosen.
Yeah. It's because they're reptiles. Alright, so, yeah. 15, obviously, the number of this post and the blinded eyes. And 15 is Ayin or Ayin in Hebrew, which is the eye. Marilyn Manson obviously has the left eye with the circle and the dot, which is the solar symbol. But, again, he shows also this sort of, like, connection between soul and Saturn, or the Christ and Satan, or Lucifer, and... I mean, he's probably also tied up with all these, like, shady networks that all these other people that that are on in these pictures. Because if you just look at all the... I mean, but at least he realizes it and is pointing it out, and I think that's why he does and did what he did. And also, like, none of these, I don't think, say it, but 10 and 5 would obviously be Yod and Hey, Yod is the male or the masculine, like phallic element, and then He is the female or mother or daughter. And so 1 and 5 would be like the male and the female. And again, Marilyn Manson um, embodies, again, like the Baphomet, because 6 and 9, the soul and the Luna or sun and moon. And he even mentioned 619 and I know I'm ready. And that's sun and moon in Greek, or Helios and Selene. And it's just funny how he realized this in his own way. In my opinion, the apocalypse must be primarily an internal spiritual event, and only in a secondary, and only in a. This he mentions the Enochian Apocalypse by Donald Tyson, which is online. But I don't know. I resonated with this as a kid. I was about 13, 14, 15 when I got into the triptych and um, then slowly got into the numerology and the Kabbalah and Crowley and Grant. And Kenneth Grant talks a lot about the goddess 15. And let me pull it up. Here, where he's breaking down the formula of Kali, Cream, or Krim, he mentions I, the penultimate letter I, or long vowel I, is known in the Tantras as the left eye which accomplishes all desires. The left eye is the Ayin, the eye of Set. Crowley attributed it to the image of Baphomet, the devil of the Book of Thoth. The eye refers to the goddess 15, whose formula is concealed in Atu 15. The final letter, M, is not strictly speaking a letter at all, but the subtle vibration represented in Sanskrit by the Chandra Bindu, the seed of the moon. This is depicted in the form of a crescent and dot inscribed above a figure resembling the Arabic 30, thus, Om. In the later solar version of the mysteries, this number denotes the completion of a cycle, the full moon or month, etc. The Chandra Bindu consequently represents absorption in the void, the reality beyond time, Dakshina Kalika. Cream, the essence of Kali, is expressed alchemically as electromagnetic vibration composed of emanations which flow periodically from the genital outlet of the consecrated priestess. Statuary of Kali depict her with a dual stream of blood flowing from the corners of her mouth. This indicates the scarlet or Rajaguna, the double liquid of life typified in the zodiac by the double water glyph for Aquarius, the mystical water of life. Crowley equated Aquarius with North, Nuit, as the prototype of Babylon, whose symbol is the fire snake. According to the Nirvana Tantra, the son of the sun is death, and he is established in the south, Dakshina. The power of Kali, i.e. the elixir of immortality, makes him flee in all directions with fear. Hence, she is called Dakshina. But according to the Kamakhya Tantra, the sun behind the sun is on the right and becomes the grantor of liberation or immortality. Hence, she is called Dakshina Kalika in the three worlds, past, present, and future. The meaning of this symbolism is that Dakshina Kalika reconciles north and south, Nuit and Hadit, Horus and Set. She polarizes these dual terminals for purposes of manifestation. She stands upon Shiva as Nuit arches over Hadit, on the stela whose number is twice 359, the number of Shaitan. The stela is called the Abomination of Desolation, see Library L, chapter 3, verse 19. It is significant in this connection that the number 19, the number of the verse in AL which names the stela, is the feminine glyph, because the void, Nuit, ultimately absorbs the totality of manifested existence or conceptual thought. This state of affairs is regarded with horror and fear by unliberated beings who continue to mistake for reality the realm of illusory phenomena. Kali is also depicted with three eyes which represent the three states of consciousness, waking, dreaming, and sleeping, and the kalas upon which these states are based. The solar, creative current exemplified by the waking state, the lunar, formative current exemplified by the astral or dream state, in the state of total dissolution of form in the fire of Sushupti, exemplified by the void of deep sleep. The right eye is the solar ray, the left eye the lunar. The Anya, the third eye, is the supreme seat of the will, and it is symbolized by the stellar fire of annihilation, which is the formula known as the opening of the eye of Shiva. In the Egyptian mysteries as revived by Crowley, Anya, the hidden eye, is the eye of Set. The other two eyes are those of Horus as Rahu Kuit and Hur Parkrat, sun and moon respectively. Creation is unnatural in the sense that thought is a disease of consciousness. Thus, when the goddess assumes the dominant role in union with Shiva consciousness in the process known as Viparita Maithuna, creation occurs and the universe of name and number becomes apparent. Shiva, the unchanging substratum of pure awareness, whereupon all forms arise, is figured as Shava. Hence the saying, Shiva is Shava without Shakti. This symbolism leads on to the corpse-strewn Shmashanam, burning ground, wherein the devotee invokes the goddess. The Shmashanam is the flower-strewn yoni of the goddess, which emanates the forms of creation. Crowley maintains in his magical record that all magic is an act a rebour, i.e., against the natural state of consciousness which is thought-free, pure, bereft of mentation. The Buddhists call this thought-free state Mahasanya, or the Great Void. It is the sole reality wherein Maya, the great goddess, plays her eternal and fantastic game of make-believe. Fantastic because it is wholly deceptive, a glamour. According to the Niruttara Tantra, the mantra of Kali does not become active without Kulakara. This means that the formula of the Kala circle, as practiced in Vamamarga alone, energizes the fire snake in the woman chosen to represent the goddess. On the other hand, the Fetkarini Tantra declares that if the devotee is without a Shakti, woman, the vibration of the mantra of Kali, with mind free from all restlessness, equally activates the Kundalini. This implies that the power is in the mind, not in the physical adjuncts, or the senses, which are mere projections of the mind. This highlights the distinction between the mystical and the magical paths. The bow of flowers borne by the god of Kama, sexual passion, is synonymous with the bow held by the priestess of the silver star in the rainbow symbolism already discussed. There is a phrase in the Tantrakalpa Druma translated as the flower-covered yoni of Shakti, and in the Mantra Kabita Tantra, the self-generating flower or flower which charms all is identical with the Ritu which first appears in a married girl. The Ritu is the rutilant and primordial rite that first suggested itself to primitive man when the girl flowered into nubility and became the red flower sacred to Kali, the initiator of periods and cycles of time. This was the right or right time decreed for coitus. In the Sayama Rahasya, this flower is called Sapuspa, which means a pleasing or fragrant flower. It refers to the Suvasini, or sweetly smelling woman, chosen to represent the goddess whose emblem is the scarlet hibiscus. She secretes the mystic dew which bathes the priest's body in a sweet-smelling perfume of sweat. See A.L. chapter 1, verse 27. She is the one palace that contains all rare scents, jasmine and rose, and the emblems of death. In the Mahanirvana Tantra, it is said that the wine is the savior, Tara, in liquid form, Dravamayi. Tara Dravamayi is therefore not ordinary wine, but the mystical fluid, the moon juice that contains the kalas of immortality. To worship me, take wine and strange drugs, says Hadith in A.L. chapter 2, verse 22. The drugs are also not ordinary, being compounded of equally occult essences. In his description of the crown of the magician, Crowley refers to the 3 pentagrams with which it is adorned. They represent the goddess 15, 3 times 5, i.e. the lunar power concealed in the circle. He also mentions the great arrow embroidered from neck to hem on the magician's robe, the downward-pointing symbol of Nuit in the bows of flowers already explained. The periodic eclipse of a celestial body was compared in ancient times with the regular occultation and effusion of the female cynocephalus, which acted as a natural horologe in the Egyptian temples. At a later stage in the evolution of magical ideas, the waning or sickening moon was typified as the Osiris swathed as a mummy, or bound up in linen like the human female at the time of her periodic sickness. The mummified image of the sun god at night, i.e. the moon, thus became an image of resurrection. Similarly, the deluge of blood was likened to the inundation of the Nile, which was a promise of fruitfulness. Woman's period, the lunar eclipse, and the burial of the mummified Osiris all resumed the formula of waning, sickening, dying, of being buried in order to wax and bear fruit, i.e. to resurrect. The drama of the moon waning, waxing, and attaining to fullness features in all world religions. It is implicit in the relationship between Jesus and John. John typifies the dark diminishing moon, the precursor of the waxing light that is the mystical Christ of the Gnostics, not the historical Jesus of the later perverters of the mysteries, whose Christ was no longer mystical but merely mythical. The Chandrakala recension of the Sri Vidya treats in great detail of the days and nights of the dark and bright lunar fortnights. To uninitiated scholars, this preoccupation of the Tamil adepts appears to have been carried to the point of mania. This is not surprising. Anything inexplicable in the light of modern ignorance is classified automatically as superstition. The relegation of the number 13 to the realm of witchcraft and black magic is a typical example. This number signifies unity because 13 moons constitute a full circle or cycle, the lunar year of 13 months of 28 days. Because the number 13 typified the moon and the female, the later cults, which based their reckoning of time not on the moon but on the sun, regarded the lunar images as accursed and identified them with ideas of darkness, disease, and death. The number 13 thereafter became the type number of misfortune and uncleanness. 13 was the accepted number of the witches' coven because the rites of the Sabbath were recognized as being of lunar origin. The Vinam Sabati, or wine of the Sabbath, was the mystical effusion of the Scarlet Woman, the ever-virgin whore of the stars. 13, however, has a very special significance in Crowley's cult. In the system of reversion, 13 becomes 31, the key number of Al, and the highest aliquot component of 93, the number of Iwaz, Thelema, and Agape. It was in the lunar phase of the evolution of these concepts that 13 became the number of unity or the return to perfection, the fulfillment in both time and space of the cycle, full circle. All circlecraft is based either upon the original stellar circle of the Great Bear, goddess of the 7 stars, on the moon and her 13-fold annual cycle, or on the later and final solar cult of the 12 celestial houses of the sun or zodiac. In the lesser lunar cycle of 28 days, 14 are dark with diminishing light, 14 wax bright. The 15th day thus became the day of the goddess. The moon takes 28 days to traverse the 12 zodiacal stations, and the number 28 consequently became a glyph of the female, as did 30 of the male. As 31 is the highest aliquot component of 93, so 5 is the highest aliquot component of 15. 5 was the primal number of woman as the genitrix long before the stellar 7 and the lunar 28. For 5 days, woman was engulfed in darkness and eclipsed. From her issued the deluge that primitive man rightly identified as the substance which would later congeal and flesh forth progeny. Blood was recognized as liquid flesh, and the female expressed, through the number 5, her nubility, which was the archetypal nobility, because the only known lineage was of the blood of the mother alone. The male's role in the procreative process was at that time unknown. The 5-day eclipse was the seal of woman's nobility, the nobility that wears the scarlet mantle of nature herself, the one unimpeachable rubric of her sovereignty. And because she was seen to renew life upon earth, woman was likened to the goddess in the sky, who renewed herself through celestial cycles as a type of resurrection, a return to unity and ultimate perfection in the heavens and the hells. The number 5 thus became the seal of authority in the world of spirits. It was represented by the pentagram or 5-pointed star, still used by magicians for establishing contact with and controlling transmundane entities. The origin of the magical pentagram can thus be traced to the first observed facts of elemental nature. Crowley recommends Sexual Symbolism or A History of Phallic Worship, which is really 2 books, by Richard Payne Knight and Thomas Wright, which is the worship of, or a study of the worship of Priapus and the worship of the generative powers. So a discourse on the worship of Priapus and its connection with mystic theology in the ancients. And it's all about like the worship of the generative powers, the phallus, the vagina, or the lingam and yoni. it's linked obviously with the Kundalini, Braxis or Canubis, and Lamb being pretty much the egg and having a sort of draconian or reptilian quality. Also connects to the Kundalini, and that's the electrical current is like a double current and also connects with that, and just the numerology of it all connects. Crowley obviously also recommends in his list of reading Dracula by Bram Stoker, and then also this book Le Bas Down There by Joris Karl Huysmans. And he also wrote A Rebours, or Against the Grain, and The Cathedral, En Route, and a bunch of other really good fictions that were at the time kind of probably pretty extreme. I mean, Le Bas is pretty extreme itself. And it describes a sort of like black mass. But I think what it all is about, like if you read, Crowley recommends I think, well, he mentions Dracula in connection to the chapter on, I believe, either the blood sacrifice or, but obviously vampirism. The vampire is a symbol for just psychic or even sexual energy. Montague, I don't really know how to pronounce it, but he has, the books on the vampire in Europe, and the vampire is kith and kin, along with the werewolf, and all the other translations. But then Ida Craddock, who recently this book was published. It's Lunar and Sex Worship, one of her books, and it was, I think, 2013 or what was it? Let's see. So she was in the 1800s, like 2010. 595. I forgot about that. And then, but Marcelo Mota published Heavenly Bridegrooms in Sex and Religion, one of his Equinox books. And Heavenly Bridegrooms is about basically like sex with spirits, or this idea, at least, of it, that she supposedly did. I've yet to fully get into her stuff and her life, but at least I have those books. But yeah, anyway, this book does talk about like the connections between witchcraft and this whole sexual symbolism. I would have to find a specific quote. But it also reminds me of these other books that I found. They're not really talked about much anymore, but it's The Evil Eye and Horns of Honor by Frederick Elworthy. And they're both pretty old, but they go really deep. Well, 1900. They go into the symbolism of like all sorts of subjects, mainly the occult, but the Medusas and all these like symbols that they used in the past that have developed, especially like this mystical hand. If I can open it with one hand. This whole, which obviously I think these books, since they're old enough, you can find them on archive.org. But read them there. I was like lucky enough to find them. One was at Half Price Books. This one, the original Evil Eye, it's a little faded, but it's got a chapter on Kabbalistic writing, and it also has an interesting front piece. Sympathetic magic, totems, portents, tree worship, symbols and amulets, the Gorgonian, crescents, horns, horseshoes, touch, hands, gestures, the cross, Kabbalistic writing, magical formulae, spitting, incantation, and other protective acts, and pixies. And yeah, I mean, this book is pretty deep too, and I would recommend it to anyone that can find it, or who has the time to go read it. I don't read all these books, obviously, all at once. I take my time, and sometimes it takes years, obviously, to really appreciate a book fully.